Welcome back to Visual Trigger.
So, like, what brought me into photography? I mean, it's been so long, and even before, like, I had a camera in my hand. I remember always being in the back of my one of my parents' vehicles, and you know, it was boring, and I remember I would close my eyes and try to remember everything I saw when I from the back seat. So I'm assuming that most of that was like landscape because I mean it wasn't like we were on crowded city streets all the time. But I mean I think I did it then too. And I think I always begged them for a camera, and for whatever reason, I don't think that they really wanted me to do that. My dad was a photographer in the Air Force, and I remember he had a Rolly, I'm pretty sure it was the 2.8 version too, and I forget who he gave it to, but I always remember that. I wasn't really super stoked in later in life. I wish he would have kept that because he got that wherever he was in the service. But it wasn't until I think it was eighth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. I got a Pentax K1000, and it was just such a fantastic little camera, especially because prior to that, with the mental photos, my mom had this Kodak thing that was 126 film. I remember that. I remember going to Photomat, and you probably don't even know what that is, but this was a little kiosk hut thing. In fact, I think I even have a picture of a Photomat before it was taken down. And I had this teacher, I think it was eighth grade. I'm pretty sure it was eighth grade. And he wasn't super stoked on being a teacher, it seemed. Kind of a surly son of a bitch, which I kind of appreciated. That's fine. Be surly. I mean, I'm kind of surly. Not all the time, but I guess I have surly moments. But what I do remember, and it wasn't just like the developing of the film and the tank and mixing chemicals. It was really when it was in the dark room, and I saw that first. Because this is something that you basically had to go to a service to do, unless you did it yourself. And watching that first photograph just materialize in a bath of chemicals, and it stuck with me. And from that point, I mean, I know I shot stuff for like the yearbook in junior high. And I wasn't the stuff that the teacher did, it kind of seemed like what you see today on like DP review, like not even actually his weren't even that good, but they were like test photos, I thought. And he didn't really know a lot about a lot of other things, so I got to know people. Well, oddly, at that time also, and I think that's when my parents didn't want me to have a camera because they kind of, and I don't know if it's embarrassing or whatever. However, I was like a child prodigy magician, like with cards and shit. And I think my parents saw that's the way he should go. But making frames was always, I mean, I practiced so much with cards in front of mirrors, and I mean, we're talking like 10, 12 years old. So after the K1000, I felt that I'd kind of graduated, and I because I had Pentax lenses, I think I'm pretty sure it was an ME Super. And from that point, I don't know. I met more people through doing magic who actually were also into photography. So they introduced me to more people, and my first real camera was a Canon A1. And I wasn't very old. I worked for my dad a little bit, but I actually, you know what? I made money like doing magic, and I was able to buy you know, Canon A1. Then I bought. Then I got a. There was a used camera store run by two German dudes who were like Leica, and I remember that was the first time I actually saw Leica. I was like, it didn't. I thought my Canon A1 looked better than that, but what did I know? But there was another guy who was a magician, an older guy who was like a vaudeville dude, and he was part of a camera club. I didn't even know these existed. I mean, I was part of a magic club, so whatever. Why would not a camera club? And they had like model shoots, and I remember. I mean, I wish I could find those photos. God only knows where those are. They're probably moribund. So there's no way they exist anymore. Yeah, I wouldn't have any clue where those are. But I remember developing those because there was like a bikini shoot that these older dudes took me to, and I had my Bronica medium format camera and actually made some pretty cool photos. Interestingly, if I'm not mistaken, I think I got a talking to by I think it was the principal. And, this is a cool principal. She didn't say that anything was wrong with these photos, but like, they were like bikini shots. And I guess she didn't feel that they were appropriate to develop in a dark room in a junior high, which that's fine. I get, doing magic, and I was a member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood, which, not a lot of people got to be a member of, but I knew a lot of people who were older than me. I also did things that were on TV and all this other shit. But I remember this principal, she didn't really admonish me because she was like, the photos they're really nice looking. She encouraged me to do something more, I guess, appropriate as an eighth grader with photography. So she let me write for the local. I don't know how it worked out, but like I ended up writing for the local paper and doing photographs for the local paper as well at like 11 years old. Oddly, the first photo I got published in that photo or in that newspaper was a dude pulling a rabbit out of a hat, and it was just so ironic that I was a magician as well. And I did like close-up stuff with cards and coins. I didn't really do stuff on stage, and I think that was with the Canon A1. But from that point, I remember meeting in high school the photography department, and that teacher seemed like a douchebag. Everybody in the yearbook, I mean, they were the same people as the student government people, and student government people, they're the ones who end up like running for fucking office, and they're always horrible douchebags, like just terrible people. So I think I did photography on my own then, and I was also performing a lot, and obviously schoolwork. But from writing the local paper in like 8th grade, that I kind of ended that when I went into high school, because there were just other things, I had always had my time filled up, but I always made photos and I'm almost positive they were always black and white. There was a lab in my town, and it was an ex-IDF soldier guy named Bill. And he was there forever. I mean, I think he did work for me. I mean, up until like a long time. I just saw contact sheets that I know he had printed for me because I have like 200 pounds of negatives to go before my archive is like in order. So in case I literally died, the people who came after me would be like, "Oh, this isn't just like something random. There's actually notes and things and kind of a database of sorts with keywords." But from that point, did a few years in college. It just, I don't know. It's hard to really talk about the segue of what I did next, but suffice it to say that I kind of worked in the shadows a little bit. Uh, I wasn't involved in something where, besides whatever team you were on, you could take credit for things. So I wasn't really used to getting the credit for something. So like a photo credit seemed kind of weird. Uh, I did I did a fair amount of shooting in not because of that, but just like as an adjunct to that. And oddly, I had to look like a tourist sometimes. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing because the photos had a purpose, but other photos I took really didn't have a purpose except they were just of like places and there were people and I had a camera with me. It and that at that point I was shooting Nikon and F3s, F4s, lots of heavy fast glass for one reason, and no, it wasn't like I was a paparazzi or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I used to care, don't fucking care anymore. But at one point, that job it got weird, and I had a kid, and I kind of preferred seeing her grow up than the demise of some of the people I knew around me. It just I, it wasn't like I got out of that completely. I just segued into something that wasn't as dangerous. I was, I could use what my skill set was to be more in like analysis rather than doing what I did before. So the thing was, it just, you know, the, I preferred the adrenaline, and it took a long time to get that kind of out of my system. And, from all those things that are through your head and, being relatively young, that job ended a marriage, and everybody I knew in that world, everybody was either getting divorced or had been divorced. That's just what happened in that world. But interestingly, I made a few contacts from that world, and I shot for some like first responder, police, SWAT, all these kind of magazines. And I could finally like kind of put my name on something too, which was kind of cool. I wasn't used to like seeing your name on like a cover of something. I decided to broaden my horizons from that world. And I think at this time I was shooting Nikon F4s. And then I knew some people at a polo club in Santa Barbara and asked if I could, come by and make photos. Well, I ended up getting published a lot in polo magazines, the Rob Report, lots of things that rich white people really liked. Things that had to do with golf, jets, tennis, vacation spots around the world. And I remember there's this, I always met the trippiest dudes. There was this guy. And he was a good writer, and he wrote for like golf magazines. So I did. He would always request me to do the work for the magazine that he would write for, and it was cool. I got to see a lot of cool shit. I didn't really think I don't know if I ever thought I wouldn't see it, but it was just different shit. And through the polo world, I met the craziest shysters, like some of the richest people in the world, and just like entertainment, it attracts these fucking people. Like one guy, he always played in Palm Springs. We were friendly. He had a massage therapist on staff. He had a cook on staff, Australian dude. And the one thing I learned from that world is you never ask how your wife is, because you don't know who they're freaking standing next to. And they pretty much all seem to cheat on their wives, but whatever. I brought a pretty good bottle of wine to this guy's house because he invited myself and some other people over. And he kind of brushed the bottle aside, like, oh, whatever. Well, I think there were 4 of us who were going to dinner. And he said, hey, Chris, why don't you go down to my cellar and pick out a bottle of wine or 2 bottles of wine to bring to dinner tonight? And I'm like, first off, he didn't even think about the bottle that I brought. But I don't think he thought I knew as much about wine as I did. So when I went to his cellar, I identified the 2 most expensive bottles and brought those up and said, hey, these are going to go really good tonight. And the look in his face, I've seen with other kinds of people. Like, I think he actually wanted to kill me at that point. Like, I saw the look. Well, anyway, let's just jump forward to like 4 years. One day I get this weird 760 phone call on my... that had to have been the mid to late 90s. And yeah, it was mid to late 90s. So the phones still had... No, this would have been the late 90s. So they had like who was calling you. I don't think it really said the name, but it was definitely caller ID. So I answer it, and it was someone from a police department. And they asked if I knew where to find the Australian guy. Allegedly, the dude had killed his ex-wife's boyfriend, who was some fancy art dealer. And and of course I never heard from that guy again. Not in the context that would, like, I knew where he was or anything. But shooting in that world was definitely, that was a trip. And this writer guy, we did a story on a film festival for, I'm pretty sure it was the Rob Report, because that was one of the ones he wrote for. And we got credentialed, whatever that was, to this film festival. But it was more about the town that the film festival was in. And I thought people worked for magazines. I didn't know people worked for agencies. I thought people either had an agent or they just worked for magazines. Because if you had an agent, you did ad work. I didn't know that there were people who worked for agents and just took photos and then uploaded them to the agent, and then the agent sold them to other magazines. But I'd never seen anything like like this at all. Well, to make a long story short, after I shot this thing, I kind of, and now we're talking, it's like 1999. I was shooting film. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure that almost everybody was shooting film. And I'd Googled something and I was like, okay, well, I own the rights to these. These people only have first usage, serial rights, North American, so they don't really have weekly usage. So whatever. Um, I put it in the back of my mind. Well, after that, we finished up this thing. We did all these fancy parties, and at Polo, there were like I met a lot of people at Polo. I remember Monica Lewinsky crashed her car on the way to the Polo game one day, and when I looked at my website, it was hit by EOP.gov, which is Executive Office of the Presidency. Massive hits, like all day, looking for photos. It was the craziest thing. And when I talked to one of my other friends, he was like, "Oh, well, that's a certain agency." Well, one of my friends was an entertainment attorney, and they were releasing Erin Brockovich. And if I'm not mistaken, it was about 2 weeks before that. I had just shot a whole bunch of stuff in London, and I saw the first digital, it was a Nikon D1. And I was like, holy shit, that's wow, I don't have to scan photos anymore, which I scanned a lot of frickin' photos. Well, my friend, he put my name with some like publicity woman at the PR department of this movie company. I mean, it's huge. It's universal. I mean, and I remember she called my name and there was a group of 50 fucking people. And they all knew each other. I mean, that intimately. They knew each other really well. Well, pretty sure she called me at least in the top 5. And they were like, who the fuck is this guy? And I think I was probably the only person with a digital camera then, because everybody scanned their film. They ran to go to a lab somewhere. I used ANI. I don't think they were using ANI. But I remember in the back of my mind, I was like, these people all work for those agencies. So I'd made some notes about an agency. And I was just like, fuck it. I will find out the format. I uploaded a whole bunch of photos and literally got called, I'd say with like the next morning, by this agency. And they asked what I did and all these other questions and asked if I would enjoy shooting for them on a more consistent basis. And, I'd kind of been there, done that with the travel, rich white people kind of hobby shit. So I thought that, that'd be a kind of a fun thing to do. And, yeah, I was there for 15 years, and that's a whole other story. But hey, I'll tell you what, I made like 4 of these before, and I looked at them on the machine, and I was like, ugh. I don't like the lighting, because it was practical light. I didn't use anything. So yesterday, so I usually only hired grips in the movie industry to be my assistants because they're fast. All they want to do is get what you need done so they can sit on an Apple box and have a cigarette. I didn't really like assistants. I just, for whatever reason. So when I took a picture of what I did and sent it to the guy I used to hire all the time, he was like, "Yeah, baby, now you're gripping." So yeah, this is much different than blogging, much different. But yeah, this is it's interesting. I don't know what I'm going to talk about the next time, but I don't know. I think I'll turn on the lights again, and you'll probably see me in the same shirt because I'll probably do another one after I watch the news.